What's up, everyone? This is Jason here. We finally got a Proto Reflex rail from ZephyrSports.com or ZephyrPaintball.com, located in Ventura. Now, the one thing that I do want to talk about before we get started is the difference between the 2011, 2012, and the 2013s. The 2011s had this style of a ASA, which is, you can sum it up as a side mount. The 2012, 2013s have a front mount ASA, but here's the only real difference between the 2012 and the 2013 is the color scheme. That's it. Even with this one, from the ASA up, the marker has not changed. Just let everyone know. They're still using the same kind of board, internals, eyes, the whole 9 yards. So just like all my videos, I want to start from the bottom of the gun and work my way up and just kind of tell you guys a little bit more about the marker. So now, of course, like we mentioned, this ASA is the older style, but overall it's still a nice little purge unit. I have no problem with that. But of course, it's an ASA. There's not really too much we can get into about. So now, with the Reflex rail, they are using the ultralight board, okay? Which originally started out in the dye guns, the dye ultralights. Now with the ultralight boards, and we'll go ahead and we'll talk about this first, you do have to be careful when putting in and taking out your battery. Even when I had my PMA and even my DM9, same thing. You do get a little warning sticker that tells you how to put in the battery and how to remove the battery. Okay? So basically, when you're installing this, please pay close attention. So we'll go ahead and we'll put the battery in. Okay, so with the ultralight board, and of course we'll get this on the camera, when you turn it on, you actually get two locations of your LED. One will be right above your thumb, and the other would be near your palm. This is a good design because it does show you in two plain to see locations what's going on with your marker. Now, of course, with the board, the top button turns it on. The bottom button will turn off the eyes. We'll go ahead and do that. So once your eyes are off, you have blinking red, and you can see the LED changing colors. Let's go ahead and turn it off here. Now, we'll go ahead and keep talking about the board. With this board, if you want to change any of the settings, you do have to put the marker into configuration mode. Once you're done with the configuration, then you have to turn off the marker, take off the configuration, turn back on the marker, and then it will work. So programming on this marker, it's easy, but there's a couple extra steps that you do have to do, but overall, not too bad. Now with the ultralight board, as you can see, up here, they did pay close attention to the wiring. They made it more simple and kind of compact. I like that personally. Only reason why, how many times have you took apart your marker and, have a lot of slack left into your wiring, trying to tuck it in the gun? Not going to have that problem with the rail. The Reflex rail, I'm sorry. Other thing that they have fixed is when the rails first started coming out, the buttons, which they might be kind of hard to see, which I'll try to show you guys, right in front of the Allen, you just have two little push buttons. When the rails first came out, I believe it was 07 or 09, those buttons were not sized correctly. So you actually had to get tin foil, glue it on, and give your button a little extra oomph. They don't have that problem anymore. That problem is gone, so that is a good movement forward. With the trigger, it is actually a 5-point adjusted trigger, so you are going to be able to fine-tune the Reflex rail trigger to your liking. Excuse me. Now, of course, like all markers, it comes with a spring. I always recommend shoot it with the spring, take the spring out, then shoot it. See which one you like better. We're going to close this so we can just start talking more about the gun. Now, the trigger guard, you do have plenty of space, so you don't have to worry about your trigger fingers hitting the actual metal. Don't have a problem with that marker. The trigger, great. Honestly, it's, especially being a 5-point adjustable trigger, it has a really good feel to it. It's really responsive. There's some side-to-side play, but of course with fine-tuning your trigger you should be able to minimize that or practically get rid of it. But not a big deal if you ask me. So, the regulator is the same one they've been using for several of their markers, which is the hyper regulator. Now, a word of the wise is if you don't like this regulator, it's going to be a little hard to change it. Reason why is they use a very small male-female connection on this, so you probably would have to purchase a adapter. But overall, with a lot of the new guns coming out, you shouldn't really have to mess with the regulator. The regulator you should be totally fine with. Now, of course, the regulator is a swivel, so you can move it around for your playing style, your playing comfort, whatever you prefer. Of course, moving on up, as you can see, you do not have a screw hole or a panel to get to the eyes. They've copied a really cool feature over from the dies, which what it is, now of course let me get it out of here for us, they use a housing or a chamber, whatever you want to call it, to keep the eyes safe from debris. Now of course if you ever did have to access your eyes, you do have to split the marker in half, and when you split it in half, it reminds me a lot of a Mini or an Empire Axe, because you have to basically open it up. Now, with this chamber, let's go ahead and move the gun over too. With this chamber, this is also your ball detents, which are located right here. So basically the ball goes in, those detents stop it. Once the bolt comes to push the ball, the detents just slowly move out of the way, just like I'm making them right now. So, if you decide to get this marker and you take this out and you clean it, to put it back in, there's only one way it goes in correctly. You can notice, we'll go ahead and turn, I'm sorry, I don't know why I put that there, apologize. You notice you have an indent here, an indent on the bottom, and another indent on the side. That's going to make it that this can only go in one way to prevent any kind of damage or any kind of breakage in the gun. So we'll go ahead and just put that back in. Okay. Now, the feed neck is okay. It's kind of bulky on the back end, but it is relatively a small feed neck. So once you put your hopper on, if it's a Z2, a Prophecy, a Spire, or Rotor, you should be totally fine. You shouldn't have any issues with the gun. And of course, I know I'm going to get asked, the two pieces of metal located in the front and toward the back of the bolt assembly are nothing special. It's just a little gun perk that makes the gun look kind of snazzy. That's all that is. So, the final thing I want to talk about in this video is going to be the bolt assembly. To get the bolt out, you actually have to turn it a certain amount of time, then start to pull it out with the Allen in there. Okay, and there's your bolts. Now the reason you have to do it like that is when you start to actually unscrew the bolts, this starts to happen. your bolt assembly will actually come apart. And next thing you know, you take out the back part, you still got your actual bolt itself and the top hat or the cam or the housing, whatever terminology you want to use, still inside of the gun. That's why you have to, you know, remove a few times and slowly start pulling it out. Now, of course, I actually like to take off the O-ring whenever I'm going to take the bolt out. I do not like just popping it off. The bolt is in 3 pieces. You have your back cap, your housing or your top hat, whatever you prefer to call it, and then you have your actual bolt assembly itself. As you can see, doesn't have a lot of O-rings, nothing compared to my MacDev clone GT when I had it. That thing had a buttload. So very simple bolt design, very simple marker all together. So let's put this back together. So overall, it's not a bad little marker. They do retail for $4.99. Now, of course, if you get into what's referred to as the PGAs, which are just a updated color scheme, they do get a little bit more pricier. They go to $5.49. Now, of course, with the gun, you do get a nice little carrying case. You do get the typical Allen key set, spare O-rings, and the Proto barrels are not bad. The Proto barrels, for what you're going to use them for, are actually pretty quiet. They're a nice gun. When I had, a nice barrel. When I had my PM8, I in fact did get a Proto barrel, and I used it every time. They shoot great. They have a great mirror image, mirror finish inside, and they're a very light barrel. So overall, good little barrel. You don't really have to worry about that too much. So other than that, thank you very much for watching, and I appreciate the patience for us to finally do a review on this marker. This is Jason with the Proto Reflex Rail.